IOM Radio Network. .com.
Good evening, everybody. It's that time again, Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on this Tuesday evening, a little bit after 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. It is January 12th, 2016, and we are, of course, at the Uptown Auto Repair Studio, broadcasting live on IPM Nation 1, and, of course, Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we also have the honor and privilege of being on OMTimes Radio, and, or I should say, the new OTR FM, specifically. And joining us again tonight is Matt Nizanoff. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Matt, and thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, tomorrow's a big day. You got the debut of Politipod tomorrow morning.
It is 10 o'clock, and all is well.
10 a.m. on IPM Nation 2. You can find that at ipmnation.com/live2. And, you know, Matt, you were on recently, but for people who didn't hear the show or who don't know, what is Politipod exactly?
Politipod is a collection. It's there are some one-liners in it to keep you laughing. There's some essays on issues, serious issues, and looking at them in a little more depth. There are sketches, and there is a section on elections and where they are and when they're happening, so people know when to go vote.
Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit last time, and you know, there's you were commenting before that there's actually an election going on somewhere every week in this country. Somewhere there is an election.
That is true. There are local elections happening all the time, and then there are the big ones that come up that everybody hears about.
Right.
But I'm hoping that folks will start hearing about democracy happening every week.
Yeah, yeah. Did you speaking of we'll talk about something that happened today, obviously, in national politics. Did you happen to see the State of the Union?
I did see the State of the Union. I'm afraid I did not get to see the response. South Carolina's governor gave the response. But yes, I did see the actual State of the Union.
What did you think? I haven't seen it yet. I was Jen and I were at an event earlier, and then you know, I'll probably I find State of the Union event addresses kind of boring personally. So, but I might try to sit through it later on YouTube. I'll find it. I mean, what did you think? Was it any surprises?
I don't think that you'd be surprised by much of what was said. I think that the tone was very positive and optimistic.
Right.
And sometimes it can be not so. So that was, you know, that's just good to see.
Yeah.
And there were even specific pleas for trying to get to that bipartisan, if you want to call it that, or nonpartisan tone. But it's the State of the Union. So there's a lot of very positive things, and people, you know, will take the time they did the applause breaks so that everybody got a chance to applaud, and then you could see where the divisions were because there was half the room applauding and half the room not applauding. So you can see, you know, you pretty much know where, you know, when the shot went to John McCain, mm-hmm. You know, he was going to pretty much be sitting there pretty placidly, not reacting in any strong manner in either direction.
I did read online that there was one moment during the address where, you know, he got a bipartisan response. Everyone applauded, and that was discussing the United States taking the lead in working toward curing cancer. And I don't know if that was especially at the forefront of people's minds because of the death of David Bowie announced yesterday, but I think that's the first time that's ever come up in the State of the Union address or any kind of policy speech by a president before, at least that I can remember.
I'd have to think back, but yeah, I off the top of my head, I can't come up with a something similar than that.
Yeah.
I think there was a pretty bipartisan response when he was talking about terrorism
Hmm.
and the response to that as well.
Yeah.
But I also, yeah, you are correct, and your point stands.
Yeah. um, so you had messaged me about you have some thoughts because I've been talking about this a lot on the show, the Oregon ranchers, and you said that you had some insight on that, and I'm curious to hear what you think. And I did check after not really paying much attention to it for a couple of days. I did check earlier tonight, actually right before going on the air. I will confess it's been a busy day, so I haven't done a lot of show prep. But I guess now the ranchers have been taking down a fence that the federal government put up, but still no shots fired or anything like that. It's still not really the word standoff keeps getting used, and I think that it's not really a. I don't feel like it's really a standoff. I feel like it's kind of a more of an armed protest. But what do you think about this whole thing, Matt?
Right, and I absolutely agree with your point. Armed standoff would be the right way to phrase what's happening. Yes, I heard that same story. Apparently, the folks who have taken over the refuge have, I guess, they commandeered a fish and wildlife vehicle and used it to start tearing down a fence between the reserve and some of the local land.
Mm.
And so, I mean, an action, but as you say, fortunately, towards the nothing towards the violent side. Nothing that, frankly, everybody's kind of expecting when there are 150 armed guys taking over a building.
Has that been confirmed, by the way? Because I know at one point it was very odd. It was like nobody really knew how many were there. I heard one report that said it's somewhere between 15 and 150. And I remember thinking that's a pretty wide swing. We really don't have a clearer picture. But maybe somebody has come up with a firmer number since then. I don't know. Is that what you're hearing? 150?
Yeah, I've just heard 150. I can't say that it's been confirmed
Okay.
that I know of, but that's the number that I've heard the most. And they also, as you pointed out last week, they've also been calling for folks to come join them, while the local sheriff has been asking explicitly for people to not come out and join them.
Yeah, I know there was a sheriff who actually offered to escort them out of the state, and of course they declined. But I mean, what do you think? I mean, you've heard my thoughts. I'm actually sympathetic to these guys because I think the resentencing that happened to the Hammonds is absolutely indefensible, and I think it's great as long as it remains nonviolent. I think it's great that these ranchers are standing up. I understand too they have some other interests beyond just what happened to the Hammonds. But what do you think? Because I've actually surprised myself when this whole thing first broke open. I was kind of like a lot of people. I was kind of rolling my eyes at it, but I hear the name Bundy associated with it, and Cliven Bundy turned out to be such just a caricature of a human being. But what do you think about this whole thing?
In fact, that's what I was last week when I heard your show. That's what sort of perked my curiosity about it as well, because you played that clip of the interview with Fox, and you could hear, as you were talking about it, you could hear your going through it and sort of changing your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with you about on the point of what happened to the Hammonds. I think that the whatever the act was that they did, they were convicted of it, they were sentenced, they served their time, and then for a second judge to come in and say, well, but we have these minimums that you're supposed to have, and they didn't do their minimum, so we're going to throw them back into jail. That doesn't sit well with me either. I think that the problem then would be the first judge. That's who you have to look to. If he didn't assign the minimum that he was required to do, then he's the issue there, not the Hammonds, and you don't run out and throw somebody back into jail.
Exactly.
with the group of folks who have taken over the refuge, there's another issue here. Now, the Hammonds lawyer, it's my understanding, the Hammonds lawyer has come out and wanted to make clear that these folks are not speaking for the family. They may agree on the issue, but he's saying they don't speak for us and they're not, they're not associated with the family.
Right.
The fact that they are doing the protest armed, of course, I think just about anybody else who had a collection of people who had arms would be responded to perhaps a little differently than this group of ranchers. And it's not quite clear as to why. The taking over of a government building while armed is something that that does sort of get under my skin a little bit. I think you can protest the government without doing it by force of arms to overtake a location. It is said that they have gone through papers and they've been trying to uncover some sort of dealing or something that they can find through paperwork that will confirm that, they're absolutely right. There's been a conspiracy all along. If that's true, that's another problem. I don't think, as I say, the way to protest, I think there's a pretty good way to do that without having to, invade a gift shop.
I want to talk about this more with you in a moment, Matt. We have to take a very quick break, but we will be right back. Stay with us, everybody. We're chatting with Matt Nisanoff tonight on Unleashed. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on this glorious Tuesday evening here on IPM Nation 1. And, of course, as we are every Tuesday and Thursday night, OMTimes Radio, specifically OTR FM, the premium channel on the OMTimes Radio Network. Don't forget the television edition of Unleashed every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation. And then we get that up and available on demand on both YouTube and Vimeo for you. And we're chatting with Matt Nisanoff from Politipod, which debuts tomorrow on IPM Nation 2 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and then we'll make it available on demand for everybody. And we've been chatting about the standoff with the ranchers in Oregon. And, Matt, I want to just kind of, we were talking before the break about, you were saying that you have some concerns about the ranchers being armed and so forth. And I share that concern, but the thing is, I wonder, though, if they weren't armed, because I guess prior to them going and, as you said, taking over this gift shop, or I've also heard it called a welcome center, which I guess is kind of the same thing. But I know that prior to that, there was a peaceful protest, and then it kind of broke off into this other thing. But the thing is, if they weren't armed, if this were just another peaceful protest, I wonder, would anyone even notice? Would anyone even care? And I feel so strongly about what happened to the Hammonds and this injustice that I think I would prefer, as long as it remains peaceful. I don't see, that's the thing. I don't really, if they all are legally allowed to carry, I don't have a problem with them being armed as long as it doesn't break down into some sort of shootout. But I don't think if they were unarmed, that them being there, I don't think anyone would notice. I don't think it would be a national story. And I don't think anyone would even realize that resentencing, and I've learned a lot about resentencing recently, and I understand, how resentencing is supposed to work. If you're convicted and sentenced to something, to serve a prison term that's ridiculous, you can have it repealed or appealed, I should say, and have it changed. But I see, until this whole thing happened, I had no idea that resentencing can also be used to really screw you over, as has been done with the Hammonds. And again, I fear that if those ranchers weren't armed, no one would even hear or care about this story. And I think it's a story that needs to, that people need to be aware of, that this goes on. What do you think?
I think the resentencing is a very serious issue. I don't think that this is what has brought it to national consciousness. I believe that you are a person who is going to be interested in what the root cause of it is, and who is going to follow through on finding out. And I don't think that the national story is one about resentencing. I think the national story is, hey, there's a bunch of guys with guns and they've taken over a building. This is an act of sedition. This is a matter of guns being where they are potentially going to start a harm. And I will definitely say that you're right. As long as it's peaceful, and as long as they're in a place where they can open carry, then they can certainly do that. But we're both, I think, on the same page when we say we certainly don't want to see something happen where somebody gets a little too tired while they're on guard duty, or they, apparently didn't bring enough snacks themselves. So if somebody's a little too hungry and a little bit too tired and sees something they think is a National Guardsman, is what happens next. And I think that's summed up by the sheriff who you mentioned before. The sheriff has said to them, I agree with you guys. I don't have a problem with your point. I do want you to leave. And they had earlier on said, well, if the local folks want us to leave, then we're going to leave. And then the local folks said, we want you to leave. And they said, well, we've got to make this point.
Right.
So there's all these little half steps and back steps. The real issue that they brought up, and I refer back to the clip that you had played from Fox News, because what I heard him talking about was the government and how the government is, the government brought up the case. The government is in control of the land. The government is adjudicating the case, and therefore it's somehow a conflict of interest. He didn't use that term, but he was implying,
there's no
the government as a one single thing is basically railroading all things.
Right.
And that's where I definitely have a disagreement, because that's the brilliance of the founding fathers of America. That's where James Madison and the others on that committee really made a choice that we have lived with and set an example for the rest of the world with, and that is a separation of powers and a separation between the branches of government. When he says the government owns the land and the government's the plaintiff in the case, the question that the Fox reporter there refused to answer that he posed, who is the plaintiff?
Right.
He is right about that. The government is the plaintiff, and the department is an executive branch that is charged with executing the actions of the government. And they're the ones who are the plaintiff, but the people hearing it are the judiciary. And the judiciary is not dictated to by the executive. And we have seen that very clearly over the history of our country. And look at the EPA, the cases that it's brought up against big business. It doesn't automatically win. It loses a lot. A lot of cases have been lost by the EPA. A lot of cases have been lost by every department that brings them up. They don't always win. They don't always lose. And the idea that the government is a single entity that is, that is overrunning all things at all times seems to me a bit of an overreach.
Right. I take your point, but then again, that I don't think that means though that when there is an obvious example of the government, like with the Hammonds, I mean, this is an example of the government clearly treating people unfairly. And I mean, I think about this kind of stuff a lot because, as essentially a small L civil libertarian, for example, Jen and I earlier were at a presentation about civil forfeit. Wow, I can't talk tonight. It's been a long day. Civil asset forfeiture, where the government just takes your stuff with no due process. So, I think the government, I think it's important that, even if you believe, well, it doesn't happen that often, I think it's still important to try to hold the government accountable when it does happen, because I do think the government tramples on us quite consistently. And, in the case of, again, civil forfeit, I'm saying it backward again. I think I'm turning dyslexic. In the example I was giving a moment ago, I'll just say that, that's an example of where the government just consistently tramples over people. And if you can't afford a lawyer, you're screwed. You're not going to get your property back. So I think it's important to hold the government in check to the extent that we can. So, go ahead.
Once again, we agree. We agree basically. I think that there are powers that the police use that they are using in excess, that it's not a perfect government. I do believe, though, that while there are problems, you fix the problems. And I don't know, as I said, that invading the gift shop, it is the welcome center, and the gift shop's a part of it. But I don't see invading the gift shop of a federal building as being the way to change what's happening. Yeah. It's not a focus on the Hammond case. It has become the Bundy,
Well, I do agree with you there to an extent, because I think it depends on where you're getting the story from. We do have sort of this short attention span soundbite media where a lot of media outlets do just sort of present it as, a bunch of crazy militia wannabes in cowboy hats have taken over a government building, and sooner or later the federal government's going to show up and there's going to be a shootout, and ignoring what is really the underlying issue. And no, I think you're right about that. And I think the media really needs to tell the whole story more consistently and focus more on the Hammonds. Some media outlets have been, and some, frankly, don't. And they just kind of dumb it down to, like I said, a bunch of...
Right. They dumb it down, or they turn to the issue that the Bundys want to talk about, which is government land issues. And, this whole thing with the fence this morning, that's not directing the discussion back to the Hammonds and the situation, or even just the situation that the Hammonds going to. They're going for this idea that, we're not leaving until the government. And when they did come out with their demands after the snack request, they did come out and say, what we want is the the federal government to relinquish control of the land to the locals, and we're not leaving until that happens.
Right.
Right, like when they said, we're going to be here until the locals ask us to leave. And then the locals asked them to leave, and they said, we'll do that soon, I guess. And
Matt, not to interrupt, but we only have about 30 seconds left with you. Please, let's before we let you go, let's plug Politipod one more time.
Thank you. Yes, please. If you folks want to get a good laugh out of the day, join us here at IPMNation.com /live2 tomorrow at 10 a.m., Wednesday at 10, Saturday at 7, Sunday at 5. And we are aiming to give you a chuckle.
Yes.
So give us a listen. There's also some content, some issues, serious issues that are looked at as well. But please come by, listen to it. It's the premiere, so we'd love to not only have you listen, but also let us know. Tell me what you think.
A little bit clear, and it's great. Now I'll probably listen to the whole thing after the show. I'm not going to wait till tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
All right, Matt Nisanoff, thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Matt.
All right, take care. And everybody else, don't go away. We'll be right back.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Everyone, welcome back. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live on the evening of the State of the Union address, which I did not see. Jen and I went to an event earlier that I mentioned when I was chatting with Matt, and thank you again to Matt Nisanoff for joining us tonight on the show. Be sure to check out Politipod tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, on IPM Nation 2 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And then, of course, it'll rerun a couple other times. So you can see all the times for the show at ipmnation.com/Politipod. And we'll make it available on demand for you as well. But we attended an event put on by the Free State Project in downtown Manchester tonight. John Stossel was there, along with a few other folks who I was not familiar with, but it was a very interesting panel, and there was a question and answer portion as well. Jen got to ask a question, and it was really, really good. It was about civil asset forfeiture, which is, an example, as I mentioned earlier, an example of the government really just running amok over people, where, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, and I've talked about it before on the show, but civil asset forfeiture is where, it tends to be thought of as a device where, drug dealers, I mean, you've seen movies where, a drug dealer gets, arrested by the government, and then they seize his cars, and they seize his home and everything. You gotta, and it's kind of presented as this thing the government does to, punish the evil drug dealer, is to take away all his assets. But what actually happens is, I'm sorry, this just handed me. Jen handed me something. It was actually put on by the Charles Koch Institute. Which I knew that in the back of my mind, but I forgot. That's who actually put on the event. But there were a lot of people from the FSP there. But what really happens in civil asset forfeiture is it's not like you have to be Scarface with this incredible empire that you've built illegally for the government to come in and take your stuff. There are examples on top of examples of the government using civil asset forfeiture to punish. There was it came up at the event tonight, and I had talked about it before too on the show when it happened. The college kid who got hit, something like $100,000 taken away from him. It was his life savings, his college tuition money. But he ran afoul of some police officers who, I believe, if I'm thinking of the same story that was mentioned tonight at the event, it was a young African-American male who had a lot of money on him. And they said, obviously he's a drug dealer, and they took his money. He didn't have any drugs on him, and he wasn't a drug dealer. But didn't matter. They seized his money. It's really, and that's why that was the point I was making earlier when Matt and I was talking. It's extremely important to keep the, to keep the government in check and hold them accountable, because, the bureaucracy really kind of feeds itself, because these people with their fancy government jobs, they have to justify their jobs. They have to make sure they keep their jobs. So the bureaucracy just grows larger and reinforces itself to justify itself. And I think civil asset forfeiture is an example of that. But maybe we'll talk about that more tomorrow on the television edition. But I do want to get to, and I'll probably talk about the State of the Union address too tomorrow after I've had a chance to watch it or listen to it. But although, you know what? I probably should watch it, because I just thought of something. I remember because now, sitting behind Obama, I'm looking at a picture of it on my screen, which is what made me think of this. As the president is giving the State of the Union, behind him, as is always the case, of course, to the left, well, to his right, but to the left, if you're looking at the picture, you see the vice president, and to the right, the Speaker of the House. And as I look at this picture, it strikes me that, so to the left, you've got Biden, and to the right, you've got Paul Ryan. And I'm thinking of the, if you all remember the 2012 vice presidential debate, where you had Joe Biden sitting there he took some criticism for this, doing a lot of mugging. He was very expressive with his facials that night whenever Paul Ryan was speaking. And I just wonder now if during the State of the Union, if Biden was sitting there making funny faces at Paul Ryan the entire time that Obama was speaking. I assume not, but I might have to watch it just to make sure. So we'll see what we get to in our remaining moments tonight, and we'll cover some things tomorrow on the television edition, and of course we'll be back here Thursday with another live radio edition. I'll mention too, I don't really plan on spending much time on this, but of course the elephant in the room, the big news that was not referred to during the State of the Union, and I understand why, but these 10 American sailors who were taken into custody by the Iranians. And I was chatting with somebody tonight. I guess the story is now that there were these two boats or two submarines, I'm not sure, that were having mechanical issues and drifted into Iranian water or something. I was talking to somebody tonight actually at the event, and he commented to me that this person said that we're probably being lied to. We're not being told the whole story, which I think is probably true. But a deeper question is why is what we're being told that we're being assured that these sailors will be returned to us soon, and that there's no reason to be concerned because we've been told they will be returned to us shortly. I don't understand something. Why will they be returned to us shortly? Why weren't they returned to us immediately? What's going on here? And it really has me questioning this, combined with them firing off a rocket. It was a couple weeks ago, firing off a missile, which was clearly meant to be provocative. I don't want to turn out to be wrong about the Iranian nuclear deal because I supported it. But, they keep puffing out their chests, and it has me concerned that maybe the Iranian nuclear deal was a bad deal, because I'm losing confidence that they're going to stick to their side of the agreement. So I don't want to turn out to have been wrong about that. I said many times when discussing it, the old expression, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. In other words, we're never going to get a deal that's perfect. That's not how deal making works. But as the clock continues to tick without any sort of deal, there is the danger of the Iranians completely unimpeded and unaccountable getting closer and closer to having some level of nuclear capability, at least beyond what they probably already may have. But now I'm thinking, don't get me wrong, I don't ever want to get into an actual armed conflict with Iran. That's a flashpoint that I don't even want to contemplate. But I wonder if the deal may have been there may have been too much capitulation on our part to the point where the Iranians feel emboldened in some way. Who knows what they're thinking? But I don't understand why what this is. This, don't worry. We've been reassured that our soldiers will be returned to us soon. That's the wrong answer. The correct answer is our soldiers are being returned to us immediately because the Iranians know that if they don't, there will be consequences. So I don't know. But moving on from that, we'll see how that continues to develop. Some things that I looked at quickly before getting on the air. I didn't have a whole lot of time tonight, but so Hillary Clinton is now attacking Bernie Sanders directly. They both have been kind of unwilling to attack each other directly, but apparently she's beginning to take him seriously. And she should, because he may very well win the New Hampshire primary. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz is beginning to attack Trump directly, and that also is a change, because Ted Cruz up until now has played very nice with Donald Trump. In fact, I guess at one event he told donors that he was going to continue to try to bear hug Trump for as long as he could. And David Brooks, conservative columnist David Brooks, has written something attacking Ted Cruz, which is a bit surprising. So as we get deeper into the presidential election season, now that the New Hampshire primary is less than a month away, the knives are beginning to come out. But the most interesting of these three different dynamics that are sort of unfolding is Hillary Clinton no longer holding back in attacking Bernie Sanders. That is very interesting and very significant. Like I said, he continues to gain ground in the polls in both Iowa and New Hampshire, especially New Hampshire. And if he wins both Iowa and New Hampshire, she's got a lot to worry about. And after what happened in 2008, she may already be regretting waiting as long as she has to really go on the attack. I don't know. We'll dive into that a little bit more, though. We got to take one more break, and then we'll come back and do our final segment tonight. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live on IPM Nation 1 and OTR FM, the premium channel on OMTimes Radio. Stay with me.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Join Elliot Jollish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jollish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jollish Hour. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed as we cruise into our final segment tonight. Thank you again, by the way, to Matt Nisanoff for Skyping in earlier. He has expressed that he would like to come on anytime we want to chat with him, which is great because I do want to have him on more often. Always an interesting conversation. Don't forget, Politipod debuts tomorrow, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 2. Let's see. Also, because we were talking about it earlier, there is a story on here, kind of an update on the Oregon ranchers and that situation. This is from RT.com, and here they do mention the Hammonds in this, which is good because like Matt and I were talking about with some news outlets, they're really good about remembering to mention the Hammonds, which is what sparked this particular armed protest, but with a lot of the media, that gets lost. But RT is really good. So it says here, Oregon militias tear down government fence, wants ranchers released. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Let me read this quickly. Armed men occupying, I'm still not sure exactly how to say this, Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon are tearing down part of a fence erected by the government to keep ranchers out of federally owned property. The escalation comes 10 days into the standoff at the sanctuary south of Burns, Oregon. Ammon and Ryan Bundy, who had the group occupying the refuge, announced they would be tearing down the portion of the fence and replacing it with a gate to allow local ranchers access to pastures. That's interesting. The Bundy brothers also said they would not end the occupation until Dwight and Stephen Hammond, the two members recently imprisoned by the government, are set free. The Hammonds were prosecuted by the government under a terrorism statute over fires set on their property that damaged 140 acres of federally owned land. Government prosecutors insisted on a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence. All right, let me stop there for a moment. So they have, again, according to this article stated, they will leave once the Hammonds are set free. So they have, this is good in my view. They have, that's the marker they've set. We will end this when this happens. So they are still trying to put the Hammonds, the issue over the Hammonds, at the forefront of what they're doing, which I think is smart, and they need to keep doing that. They need to keep doing that because that's the only way to make sure that the media in the macro gets it right, and that this doesn't keep getting turned into, by some media properties, as just sort of, like I said, a bunch of militia wannabes with guns and cowboy hats taking over a federal building. Because when the narrative is that, automatically anything after that is trivialized and just sounds crazy by default, right? If the media insists on presenting it as it's a bunch of crazy guys with guns who took over a federal building, whatever other information attached to that automatically gets lost. Excuse me. But RT here right off is saying with this article that this is what they've said. They have said they will end the occupation of that building once the Hammonds are set free. So I say good for them. As long as this remains peaceful and no shots are fired, good for them. There is more to the article. It's right on the cover of, just go to rt.com/USA. You'll see it. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because I do want to talk about Hillary and Bernie. This is from HuffPost, and there we go. It says here, Hillary Clinton isn't holding back against Bernie Sanders anymore. The old days when Clinton didn't acknowledge Sanders' existence, gone. This just went up today. Let me read this quickly. It's brief. Hillary Clinton used to avoid uttering the name of her main rival for the Democratic presidential nomination, Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont. But that phase of the race has definitely ended, with Clinton and her team staging a multi-pronged attack on Sanders in the first weeks of the new year. Clinton herself has laid into Sanders in the last 2 weeks, unspooling a new tactic of directly attacking her competitor. Her campaign staff began criticizing Sanders in earnest last autumn, but until recently, the candidate herself had mostly focused on introducing her own policies and criticizing those of the Republican contenders. The most recent anti-Sanders salvo came last week. The Clinton campaign had highlighted Sanders' votes to give gun suppliers legal immunity previously, but took the opportunity to refocus scrutiny on the senator's gun record after President Barack Obama wrote in a New York Times op-ed Thursday evening that he would not endorse any candidate who disagreed with him on gun reform, like repealing the immunity law. When Sanders' campaign said that there was zero daylight between the senator and Obama on gun control on Friday, Clinton's campaign pounced. All right, let me stop for okay, two things. First of all, personally, I do not think it is correct at all for gun manufacturers to be held liable under any circumstances for what someone does with a gun. If someone drinks and drives and kills somebody in a car accident, does the family then get to sue the automaker? This I mean, it's crazy to me, and I agree with Bernie Sanders on this. Bernie Sanders voted against right? Do I have that right? I'm getting confused. Yeah, because in other words, so Hillary is saying that Bernie is soft on gun control. That might be the one area, the only area I can think of where he is probably to the right of Hillary, actually. The socialist from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, on that one issue, I think is to the right of Hillary Clinton, in that he doesn't particularly support, with any real enthusiasm anyway, holding gun manufacturers accountable. But here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm very curious to see, as obviously Bernie Sanders is making Hillary sweat it out. And her campaign is beginning to acknowledge that. Otherwise, they would continue to ignore him and not take him seriously. Will the Hillary campaign begin to do desperate and pathetic things like they did in 2008 when they saw this whole thing slipping away, when it became apparent that Obama was, in fact, not a novelty, but a real threat to the Hillary Clinton campaign? Because I remember in 2008, it got embarrassing at times. It was outright embarrassing. They did some incredibly desperate things. Hillary Clinton at one point, I don't know how many people even remember this, but Deval Patrick, who at that time, he was the African-American governor of Massachusetts and a close friend and ally of Barack Obama. Somebody noticed that there was some similar verbiage in a Deval Patrick speech and a Barack Obama speech. And then the Hillary campaign was accusing Obama of plagiarism just because they had some similar verbiage. And, both Obama and Deval Patrick said, well, look, we're friends and we talk a lot and we trade ideas back and forth, and there's no plagiarism here. Of course, we're going to say similar sounding things. We believe the same things. We talk on a regular basis. You're going to hear similar verbiage in our speeches. But the Hillary campaign wouldn't let it go. And I remember cringing. I remember feeling, I don't even like her, and yet I felt embarrassed for her when at one of the debates with Obama, she said, remember the Obama slogan was change you can believe in? She tried to stick him with the plagiarism thing and said, responding to something he had said, she said, that's not change you can believe in, that's change you can Xerox. And it was like, oh, that's so weak. And she delivered it like she thought this was some sort of knockout blow to Obama. And the audience groaned. It was like, oh, that's just just such a weak attempt to take him down. And there was this other thing. This is one of the most pitiful things I've ever seen. So there was this narrative on the right, of course, about Barack Obama. This started all the conspiracy theories about, well, he's really a secret born Kenyan Muslim. And, he was brought into the world and raised specifically to grow up and be president so he could destroy America from within, right? A lot of Republicans still believe that. So the Hillary campaign at one point sort of co-opted that subtly and leaked a story about one of Obama's classmates from the first grade, claiming that from the time that Obama was 6 years old, he was saying that he was going to be president someday. They actually tried to make an issue of that, saying that, in other words, implying that Obama doesn't really care about the country. He doesn't really care about all the things he talks about. It's just pure ambition. He just wants to be president. or sort of subtly hinting that maybe the Republicans were right and he really was chosen. He really is the Manchurian candidate, and he was chosen to destroy America from within. The Hillary campaign actually tried to run with their own version of that. It was pathetic. It was embarrassing. And how anyone could take Hillary Clinton seriously as a candidate after that, I don't know. But they still did, because she almost won the nomination. If it hadn't been Obama, it certainly would have been Hillary. It wasn't going to be John Edwards. So I'll be curious to see if we begin to see some of that really pathetic stuff out of Hillary again this time, now that she once again is in a situation where she could lose this whole thing. I still don't think she's going to. I still think she'll be the nominee. We'll know when the South Carolina primary hits. If Bernie wins Iowa and New Hampshire, the next big one after that, if I remember correctly, is South Carolina. So then we're in the South. If Bernie somehow, and I always say, I don't think in the South they're going to vote for the Jewish guy from Vermont with the Brooklyn accent. They're going to vote for Hillary. At least Hillary lived in the South. But if I'm wrong and South Carolina goes for Bernie, then we know she's really in trouble. And he may actually end up being the nominee after all. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm not completely ruling it out either. I think there is a possibility, and we will know. South Carolina will be the test. Iowa and New Hampshire, he can win both of those and still not be a serious threat. But if he wins South Carolina, she very well might be screwed. And we are absolutely out of time. So thank you all for listening tonight, and I'll talk at you all later. Good night, everybody.